welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
How's it? Monatic, my name's Absalon. I want to thank the God of my understanding for another day of life and this opportunity to recover. Because not everybody gets this opportunity. And I don't ever want to forget that. Does everybody have a tape measure? They said 6 inches from here. Anyway. Let's take a moment of silence just for whatever it is you need to take a moment of silence for, because I need to take a moment of silence because I'm really going through like a lot of feelings, emotions, but it's all good. So this is a topic on thank you. So this is a topic on relationships, right? This topic's relationships. And it never fails. I've been to a lot of conventions, when they have relationship topics, workshops, whatever, it's full. It's like, it's here, and it's not surprising at all. I think that what we ought to do is we ought to just put on the program, say it's a relationships workshop, and then when we get here, we should talk about the steps and service, right? And we got everybody here. But no, see, relationships are important. They're very important. Because that's what it's all about, man. It's all about relationships. And I like starting new relationships. And, right away, it's like even when I first came around, and even today, when they say the word relationships, what first comes to mind is man, woman, man, whatever. Romantic, sexual relationships. That's the first thing that comes to mind because those are so sometimes there's a lot of pain involved in those type of relationships when you're so close to a person. But there are so many different types of relationships with tell you what, I have a relationship with the basic text, And by the way, Patrick, you got some nice stuff in here. Patrick let me borrow his basic text to come up here. Whenever I share, I like to sometimes I don't even open this book up when I share it, but it gives me comfort. I have a relationship with the literature in Narcotics Anonymous. And I like starting new relationships. And I have, since I got here on Monday, I have that feeling of starting new relationships with this fellowship, with people, with individuals here. You guys have touched my spirit to no end. And it's almost the same as when you start dating a new girl and a girlfriend, and you get you start talking to them and you your hands get sweaty and you're all nervous, and it's actually, to me, I like that stuff. It's fun, it's because it gives you these emotions that they're not drug induced. They're just they're there. And I've been getting that all week since I came here to South Africa. You guys are man, I'm just truly humbled by this experience and just certain things, Yesterday, the guys from Soweto, that when they walked in, man, I kind of just looked over there and I was because that's the beginning of a relationship, and with all you guys. And then when they're coming up here and you guys are reading the readings in a different language, and it's history being made, it's that stuff to me. It's the bomb. We say the bomb, man. It's great stuff, man. It's awesome. But, And then there's other stuff about relationships that, you hear that word and a lot of people are like, "Ooh, wow, relationships." I'm going to get up here. I'm sharing up here and I'm like really scattered because of all those emotions, But before I share, I always take care of business. And when I mean that I take care of business is I grab somebody from my support group and we get down and we pray, And I ask my higher power to just work through me, I always ask for the need. I ask for this need to be removed because, as a human, as an addict, I have a need to look good and to sound good. And I ask the God of my understanding to please remove that need from me so that I can carry a clear message. And whenever I take care of business, there's no telling what's going to come out of my mouth, okay? And I liked what somebody was sharing last night. I forget your name, but it's kind of like, hey, some of this stuff may get you angry, may piss you off, or and you were like, he was very diplomatic. Let's go have a cup of coffee afterwards and talk about it and all that stuff, But they say that there's a saying. They say that the truth will set you free, but first is going to piss you off. And that's what, there's a saying that they talk about that stuff. So usually what we say back home is like, if you get angry, it pisses you off, I'm like, call your sponsor, right? But anyway, I'll take a new suggestion. You can talk to me afterwards or whatever. But anyway, when I first came around, my sponsor, one of the things that he said, and he always says it, today is, he said, be who you are. Be who you are. That way, when you mess up, we know what to work on. Because when you first come to this fellowship, when I first came here, I didn't know nothing about having good, healthy relationships. And there's this thing that says I don't believe that there is a failed relationship in anything at all. There may be some pain in it, and you may want to use the word, well, maybe it's bad. This is kind of going bad and stuff. But I don't believe there's a failed relationship. There's always experience. It's an experience, and it's something to learn. Mark, sure, we went to the prison. We've been going to the prisons, and we went to the prison, and we were walking into the prison yesterday, and there's this sign, and Mark says, there it goes again, and there's this sign in there that says, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it said, for those who are successful in life, or those that can make good out of any bad situation. So if for some reason some stuff goes bad in a relationship or whatever, if you always try to look at a good perspective in it, you're going to get something good out of it. And that's been my experience, When I got this, they found out that we were coming down here to the convention, and they were asking us, hey, would you share and stuff? And we're like, yeah, we're open to all that. Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, no problem. And they emailed us on what the topics were going to be. And, my friends from back home, they were teasing me when they found out that I was doing a workshop on relationships, and I know why they were, teasing me and laughing, because I've had, could say a colorful history in 10 years that I've been in recovery with relationships, with women. And, but you know what? None of them have been a failed relationship. They have been wonderful experiences. I have learned from each one of them. And it's been great. I'll get a little bit into that later on. But anyway, relationships, right, is they have some ingredients. And it's in the steps. They have, to have good relationships, there's some ingredients that need to be there. Honesty, loyalty, all these spiritual principles that you get from the steps, commitment, all that stuff. And I always think back, to make things clear for me that I can understand, I always think back about when I was using and how and what the basic text talks about, how, because I believe that the disease of addiction has tools and has principles that it uses, and what it tries to do, it tries to isolate me and alienate me. And when you're isolated and alienated, you can't really have relationships. It's very hard to do that, and that's what my active addiction by means of the drugs, of using the drugs, did to me. It tried to get me, at first, when I first started using, it was fun, man. It was fun, really. It was I enjoyed the whole thing. I enjoyed the lifestyle. I enjoyed when I came to the United States, I'm from Colombia. English is my second language, and I actually learned how to speak English first listening to rock and roll, and with rock and roll, all that other stuff, kind of came with it and everything. But it was fun in the beginning. It really was. It was and then something they say you start crossing that line to where it was I no longer wanted to use with others because then I would have to share my stuff, and I didn't want to share my stuff. See, in recovery, that's what we do. We share with others, and that's how we build relationships. That's how people get, close to one another. While when I wasn't using, it was no way, I ain't sharing nothing. Everything, it was always for me. I just wanted everything for me. Man, we're in another part of the world, man. I get quiet sometimes because I feel today, and I get, my spirit just gets touched. And believe me, I'm a lot better now, and you guys can understand me. When I first came around and I was asked to share, I would literally just cry. And I remember my sponsor pulling me to the side one time and he would say, "Listen, Holmes, you're going to have to get that under control, because when you start crying, we can't understand a word that you're saying. So you're going to have to get that." So sometimes I kind of just pause, and it's because I'm experiencing some really lovely feelings. I call them the lovely feelings because sometimes, for the most part, I don't understand them. A lot of times people ask me, what is it that you're feeling? What are you feeling? And I'm I haven't the slightest clue, but it feels good, man. That's all I know. It just feels good. And in recovery, when I first came around, one of the first personal relationships that I got into was the relationship that I got with my sponsor. The first human being. Because before that, I had interactions with people. And I'll give you a good example. I had interactions with people when I was using, but it comes, the basic text talks about, it comes down to the animal level. It comes to an animalistic level, right? And, in the beginning I would talk, I would communicate, but as I got isolated, those skills for communicating that you need and have to have relationships in kept dwindling and dwindling. And it boiled down for me, at the end of my using, what it boiled down to was this. I would go up to the corner, to wherever it was at, and it wasn't even words anymore. All I did was I'd look over at the guy that had the dope, and I just went. And he would either go or he'd go. That was it. It was nothing else needed to be communicated. And so when I got into recovery and I started coming, went to meetings. I came from the jails, from prison. Narcotics Anonymous found me in prison, but that's a whole other story. But once I got going into the meetings, and I was going in the meetings, I didn't know what to accept. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to build no relationships with anybody. And it was what you guys did, not so much what you guys said. See, because it talks about it in the basic text. It's this message is meaningless unless we live it. So I can come up here and talk, but really it's all about, I remember a guy sharing one time, is like, yeah, it sounds good and all this stuff, but you really come live with me. Come live with me for about 2 weeks, and then you'll really know what I'm about. If you were like, could see me on the whole, then you'll really know. And we do. We come around here and we see people go into meetings and we build relationships. And I started going to these meetings and I started to notice people. And what you guys did something inside my spirit that changed my life forever. You guys started doing stuff like this. You offered me a ride after a meeting. And my first reaction was like, well, man, I don't have no money to give you to take me there. And they were like, man, we don't want your money. It's okay. We're just going to give you a ride home. Or they would bring me afterwards and say, come on out and eat with us. And I was like, well, I don't have no money. And they're like, that's okay. Just come on. It's okay. And they started doing things that are characteristics of building relationships. You're nice to people. You're like friendly. You acts of kindness. Stuff that I was totally foreign to. And it did something. It did something inside. It's hard to express it. It's like, I try, but it's hard to express it. And I like that, but I didn't know how to do it. So the only way that I've not even figure it out, that I heard somebody share on how to do it, was do these things like you did them in your act of addiction. Which, what I'm saying is, I was one of those addicts that I suited up all the time to the corner, to wherever the spot was, to wherever they were selling drugs. I was one of those that, like hung on the street all the time. And I was there, I grew up in New York, and it was like, snow, rain, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I was there, and I was like afraid to leave because I thought that I was going to miss something if I left. And I remember somebody sharing and saying, apply those same tools here for a good cause for you to take care of yourself. So I started showing up and going to the meeting all the time. And I would talk to my sponsor all the time. And even till today, it was like we were hanging out till 2 a.m. yesterday. And it was like, I didn't want to miss anything. It just happened. It's just like that. I just didn't want to miss anything. And I started to develop this relationship with this man. And I started to see, there's another characteristic of relationships, another tool, another principle, trust. Started to trust this man. And another thing that happened to me is that when I first got out of prison, all I had was the clothes on my back and a couple of letters that my sister had sent me and stuff. And my family had they stay away for many years. My family had I had burned that bridge a long time ago. And I had to stay at a place called the Salvation Army, which is where all the people that don't have nowhere to go. And, it's a lot of drugs being used there. You see syringes in the garbage. You see all kinds of stuff. And I remember that I went there, and then I started going to meetings, and I would go to the meetings, and they would ask me, hey, can I take you back home? And I remember having that shame of I don't want you to see where I'm living at. But there was something. I call it something, or I say something, but today I know that there was a higher power working in my life that would make me say, okay. And I would go to these places. And as people got to know me a little better, and I started building relationships with different addicts in the meetings, I remember one guy came and said to me, hey, Absalon, would you like to stay in my place? Would you like to stay in my flat? And I'm learning new words. But anyway, he said, yeah, he said, look, you can, we can work something out, and, you don't have to stay there anymore, and, it'll be good for you, And I was like, all right, yeah, great. I wanted to get out of that place. So we went, and I remember I slept on the floor, and it was like just a little apartment. And first day, right, we get there, and we go to sleep and stuff, and he has to go to work before I do. And this guy got up, and he woke me up, and he said, hey, man, here's a key. And I got to go to work. Before he left, he said, if you decide to steal my things, go ahead, just don't take my basic text. Don't steal my basic text. My first thought was, why don't you take your basic text with you then, right? But what happened was that he told me that, and he left me with his key. And he knew that, I'd gotten out of prison. He really didn't know me that well. I was only 2 months around in the program. And the feeling that I got when that man left and I had the key to his place in my hand, it's like one of those feelings that, wow, what's going on? Didn't understand, but it felt good. And then I went to work that day, and I was a nervous wreck. Because I thought, here it is, for the first time in my life, I feel trusted by somebody. What if somebody goes in there and steals his stuff? He's going to think it's me. And I wanted to I wanted to be part of this. And that's how I knew that I wanted to be a part of this. And I knew that I was I didn't know it at that point, but today I look back and I wanted to get into a relationship with Narcotics Anonymous. I wanted to get into a relationship with a new way of life. And as a result, I have made a lot of good friends. I mean, man, Patrick's like one of my best friends, man. And it's like, we have an awesome relationship, just like he has taught me some things that, I'll tell you what, I got a little bit of time, right? Do I got a little bit of time? Okay. Yeah, just put the little clock here whenever you want me to stop. Or if you guys want me to stop, just say, shut up. Okay. Okay. My mother never got to see me clean. And she's been dead for about 13 years now. And she used to sit on her deathbed, and she used to rub my track marks because she knew I was, an addict, and she fought my addiction for many, many years. And it was a very painful relationship. And I remember I used to go visit my mother, and whenever she would fall asleep a little bit, I used to take her morphine pills. And I would rationalize in my head and say, she's going to die. She's not going to need him. I'm the one that's still alive. I'm going to need him more than she does. And there was a lot of pain behind that relationship. And I had about 90 days clean, and I remember Patrick inviting me. I'm building relationships with people. I like how you guys say, cheers. Because every time you guys say that, there's a television show called Cheers. And they have this little theme song in there that says you want to go where everybody knows your name. Because when we were out in the street, we were just like nameless people, really. Just like zombies walking down. And finally came to a place where people knew my name. And I remember Patrick pulling up on the street. I remember it was yesterday. And he looked out the window, and we were in traffic, and he said, Absalon. And I was like, wow, I had managed to get a little car and stuff, and I was working and doing stuff that I had never done my whole life. And he says, want to go to the convention in Dallas this weekend? And I was like, hey man, I'd love to, but I ain't got no money. Don't worry, I got you. Anyway, before we get to the convention, he tells me, hey, I got to make a little stop, man. Come with me, right? Well, I'm in his car. I got to go anyway. But he says, come on. And what we do is we go to a cemetery. And he gets out of the car. I get out of the car. And he starts talking to his parents. And he says, I'm another year clean. I'm happy. I'm not alone. And I'm here with a friend that's new to the program. And, I'm not alone. Everything's good. And he put his medallion at his mom's gravesite and his dad's gravesite. And I was very like, what is this guy doing? He's talking to dead people here. It's like, it really blew me away. I'm like, ooh, what's going on, Because it was stirring feelings up in me. Because my mother had passed away and she had never seen me clean. But at the same time, it gave me hope. It gave me hope. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. And I promised my mom 10 medallions. And I've already been able to go because my mom's ashes, she got cremated and her ashes were flown to Colombia. And I couldn't leave the United States for many, many years because I was in trouble with the law and it wouldn't let me go. But I did the footwork and I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I kept building relationships with people. I built relationships with not even people in NA, with people like my parole officer, my boss. And what I did is I used the principles of the program. It's like honest, I was like, suit up and show up. I suited up and showed up to I was at every parole visit. I've always been to work, I never call in sick. I was doing all that stuff. And they allowed me to go, and that's where our trip started, We flew to Colombia and I went and brought some medallions to my mother's gravesite. And I started a healing relationship with her. And I've had a better relationship with my mother for the past 13 years. She's been dead. But there's a spiritual connection. And it's awesome. In talking about my parents, man, it's like my dad. I was talking, last night. My dad, I used to think about killing my dad. I used to premeditate, how can I kill him? Because it was I came from an abusive family where he would beat up on my mother when I was a little boy, and I would distract him and have him beat me up so that she wouldn't get hit. And for years, I wanted to kill that man. And, through the steps, through healing, through forgiveness. That's another good tool for relationships when there's some harm being done. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. It's that's a good tool to reestablish relationships. It's forgiveness. And I got to go to Colombia and I got to see my dad. And I got to start building a relationship with him. And what happened in that trip, really it was our second trip to Colombia. What happened was that I fell in love with my father. And today, that's the closest family member that I have. That's the family member that I keep in most contact with. I talk to him at least once a week now. I was able to take him to the World Convention in Hawaii and make some of those financial amends because I used to steal from that man. I used to take his vehicles, take his money. Every time he turned around, it was I was gone. And I was able to do that stuff and spend some time with him. And that's another one of the reasons because it continues. It's this, this program gives opportunities. And that's one of the reasons, too, why, when this whole South Africa trip came, it's I'm a soccer fan of football, and my dad is, too. And my dad's I would be wow, a lifelong dream for him to be able to come for the World Cup and sit in in a game, it's especially with me. And it'd be that's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm and talk to some people and try to plan that out. So it's it's there, it's there. You know what? Yeah, like I said before, I've struggled a lot in relationships with women, and that's something that I'm going through right now. But there's some healing going on. I was in a relationship with a woman for about 3 years, and one of the things that are, sometimes I have a loving higher power, and sometimes I don't understand my higher power, but I trust my higher power. Thank you for that story. I've learned how to let go of the branch. And I've gone through some painful stuff in recovery. I think one of the most painful things that I've gone through in recovery was that, I've always wanted to have a family and have that relationship, because I've experienced the relationships with, siblings, fathers, friends, all that stuff, and I'd like to be able to have a relationship as a father. And I was in a relationship with this woman for about 3 years, and she got pregnant, and we were supposed to have a baby, but she lost the baby at 6 months, and because of the program, I didn't get loaded. Because of the program, I was able to be there when that baby came out, and I was able to say goodbye. It's like no pain that I've ever felt. And for a long time after that happened, I wasn't able to get around kids. Every time they were like babies or small children, I just couldn't do it. And this last year we went to a convention, and an old friend of mine called me, and I hadn't heard her for a long time. And I'm like, "How are you doing?" This and that. And she says, "I'd like to see you." And she says, I've had a baby since I seen you." And it was like I stopped. I was like, whoa. And but I needed to work through this. And I said, I'll come visit you. And I was able to go and hang out with her, and I was able to pick her baby up, and there was some healing and all that stuff. And I'm working through all that stuff. So it's like, man, there's so much stuff. There's just so much stuff. But we can go through pain here. We can laugh. This is an awesome, awesome program. I could stand here and talk to you guys for a long time. But I'm not going to. Just going to say thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our rankings so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. Napod is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 or more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to napod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.